Hi, welcome back, guys. I've been talking all day,
Yeah.
so today I'm super excited because we are going to be talking to one of my favorite people, actually. Um, I have known her, honestly, I feel like I've known you longer than 3 years. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that in the last year or so, we've gotten to know each other a lot better, and we just vibe like so easily. It's just easy to talk to you and spend time with you. And it's funny. I know that you and I have talked about this before, but whenever we spend time together, it's never like a 30-minute thing. It's usually like a couple of hours that we
Right.
spend
Right.
time together. So, I mean,
That's
that
so
says a lot.
that is very
Yeah,
true. I think we plan for like a certain amount of time and then we end up just spending hours like just talking. And sometimes we don't even about what we said we were going to talk about.
yes.
So it's just, it's I know that happens and I know we do that quite often
We
where we plan
do.
for something,
Yeah. No, that's
but it
that's
doesn't happen
actually
that way.
pretty cool that you and I can just pretty much talk about anything. And they're always such good conversations. I know I've mentioned this to you before, like we should have recorded this because it was so good. So
That's so true. That is
we're
so true.
really good conversation. So I'm excited to be getting to know you a little bit more today. Um, so that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's get to know Diana because she is an amazing person and I love working with her. And I know that there's a lot more that I will be learning about you. Um, but for today, let's just get to know you for a little bit. So, first question. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. so, so first question. What are some things or what is one thing that maybe we should know about you?
Oh. um, so I might go into a little bit of a story on this because I was asked, to participate at a game at work and so I thought like what is an interesting fact about me? I'm like sometimes I don't think of myself as like a very interesting person. So I asked my brothers like, hey, what is an interesting fact about me? I even asked them like friends, like, what should I say? And one of my brothers actually said, like, oh, that you're adventurous. And I was like, okay, I got to get a little bit more specific than that.
Right?
And then he's like, well, and then I in the same sentence, I said, wait, are you saying I look boring? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, it looks like you don't have a life. But that's not really true. People would never think that you like jumped out of a plane, but you did. And so I thought, oh my God, like I've always been very aware of how I come off to people. I just have never been very aware of how people perceive me. So, now that you're asking me this question, I think like I'm not boring.
No, you're definitely not boring.
I may look boring, but I'm not. And I think I come off sometimes as very matter of fact, or like I have all my ducks in a row and I know exactly what I want and what I'm doing. And I think sometimes people are not very keen of that. And I think what I want to say is give me a shot. I promise you it's not what you think.
Mhm.
Um, and I've gotten throughout the years, people to be like, I never even thought that that's how you were. Like, you're such a cool person. It's so nice to be around you. I can talk to you about anything and I do not even feel judged. And I would never think that by just looking at you. So I know I look like I could be mean or standoffish, but I promise you, it's it's not like that. It really isn't.
I can actually attest to that. Yes, you are absolutely right. You are not mean. You are very matter of fact, and I think that that's probably why you and I get along so well because we're both very goal oriented for sure. And we're also very caring, but I needed to get to the heart of the matter pretty much. Like, tell me why you're here. Tell me how I can help you. Tell me how I can support you. And I will do that for you. But we don't need like the extra frills or the extra drama or the extra. Um, which I think is one of the reasons why we probably got into mental health. I know that last week we talked about why I got into mental health, but why did you get into mental health?
I'll try to make the long story short. If not, we'll be here all night. Um,
I'm okay
but
with
you
that, by the way.
I know you are. So at some point in my life, I wanted to become a police officer. I don't know why I wanted to become a police officer, but for those of you watching, I'm only like 5'2".
Mm-hmm.
Not very tall. And somewhere along the lines, I thought like I had all this power in me, and not that I don't, but it
You
takes a
do.
special kind of person to be a police officer, and I'm not that person. you know, kudos to them out there that are doing that work. Um, and I went to school. I went and got a degree in criminal justice, and I thought I'm going to go and be a cop. And I even did like training, and I thought, wow, I can really put myself through some interesting training here. Um, but I didn't actually, I never became a police officer. And really, I think it was at that point in my life that I realized I didn't want to work. I wanted to work with adolescents at that time. And I didn't want to work with adolescents once they were already in the criminal justice system. I wanted to work with adolescents prior to that. And I felt like being a juvenile probation officer sure was going to get me to talk to the juveniles, but wasn't going to get me to build a bond with them that was so deep that I would be able to understand
Mm-hmm.
what caused all of this to happen. Why are they there, right? I think that sure, I could have built a relationship with them and tried to help them in different ways, but I felt like I needed to do something more. So I thought, psychology, why not? Let me try psychology. So I did, and I got a degree in psychology, and I thought, well, what do I do now? Like, I have a psychology degree. Where do I go from here? And as many of us know, in order for you to do anything in the psychology world, you kind of need to have a little bit more than a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, challenged me as the person because I didn't think that I would be able to complete a master's degree. No one in my family had ever completed a master's degree. And I thought, wow, like, I'm going to do this. Am I sure about this? And so I am a huge believer in prayer. And I put it in prayer and I said, God, if this is the path that you want me to follow, then you're going to open those doors easily for me. And if it's not a path I'm supposed to follow, then you'll shut those doors. So I applied and I got in, and I think I was even shocked about that process because I walked out questioning whether I had been accepted or not. And so it wasn't until I got the email that I was like, okay, I really did. I'm really going to do this. So it was then that I felt like my whole purpose in life was to get into psychology. And I went to get my master's degree so that I could become a therapist. And somewhere along that process, I ended up watching my 15th birthday party video, and on there, I say that I want to be a psychologist, which is shock to because
Wow.
I thought I said I wanted to be a teacher. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's, I don't know why I thought that. But when I watched it, I thought, what? Like, all along, this is what I wanted to do. Why did I waste my time trying to be a cop? You know, like, um, so when I got my master's degree, it was in the whole practicum piece of the master's degree that I really wanted to understand, why did I pick this like career? What was it? Sure, I believe God, opened those doors, and that is going to be my purpose in life.
Mhm.
But what exactly about me like, why did I decided to get into this? I was very resistant to work with children, and my practicum site was nothing but children and their families. Um, and I do feel like it was God's way of, for one, saying that I needed to heal my own childhood trauma and to accept the fact that I had childhood trauma. And during that whole process, I realized this is why I'm here, because I understand. Um, I have such a deep connection with people, and I think I was very afraid of that connection. Once I started to embrace that connection, I started to understand I am in psychology, I am in the therapy world because, for one, that's what God wants me to do. For two, it's what's in my heart to do. And for three, I understand what it's like to have trauma in your life and not get it addressed for years, and then come to a program that really gives you that push to address it. I think
Mhm.
I felt like this is why I'm in this field. I think a lot of people say to help people. I don't know that I would say I am I am helping people, because I think that we can do our part in the role of therapy, but it is up to the person to really want to do the work. But I'd like to think that I am like that olive branch, right? Where, you know, people can reach out and know that they have someone there that can really just provide some support, provide some help,
Mhm.
provide, just like the the support that they need to be able to make some of those tough decisions and those tough changes in their lives.
Mhm. Well, and you're still not done, right?
No.
You are you're actually doing your doctorate right now.
I am, which, I find very, we go back right to that whole like something about me, and I am very insecure. I question a lot of things. I understand where that comes from, a lot better now. But, when people talk to me, I feel like there's some kind of intimidation, like, oh, she knows what she wants. She went to school, she did all these things. But it's really like, guys, yeah, I worked my butt off to be where I'm at today, but not for 1 second do I have that level of confidence of like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm this person. It is somewhere there deep inside of me, because I end up going for it. I do it afraid. I really do it afraid. I'm scared. And I'm like, I'm going to do it, but I'm scared. Um,
Mhm.
and the doctorate degree, it was one of those things. When I graduated with my master's, I thought, oh my God, I did this. Like, no one in my immediate or extended family has even like completed something like this. And, I know in Guatemala, like part of my dad's family, there's maybe 3 cousins that have completed a master's degree, or a level of education of a master's degree, and they're all men. And some of them, just finished, some finished a long time ago. But I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. So when I decided to apply for a doctorate degree, I thought I need to do it for something I really like. So again, I went back to psychology, and I found a doctorate degree that focused on psychology all around the world. So it's international, and, and it focused on trauma. And I think that through my own healing process in life, I have realized that there's a bigger reason why I am doing the work that I'm doing right now. There's a bigger reason of why I am I'm completing a doctorate degree, because, you know, I feel like that resistance that I had, you know, with working with children really speaks a lot about my own trauma and how God wants to use me with other people who have experienced some serious trauma in their life. So the doctorate degree, I was not sure about. I was so like scared. I was so like, oh my gosh, am I qualified to do this? I mean, are they even going to consider me? And when I got that letter of acceptance, it was like, okay, I just did something like, you know, something major. So I am, hopefully in a couple of years, I'll be done with my doctorate. I'd like to
Yeah.
think that in 3 years I will be done, but you know, you've been through that process before and you know that it takes a lot longer than that.
Regardless of how long it takes, the fact is you took the plunge, you're doing it.
Mhm.
Um, you're in a very selective group of women that have taken that step because, yes, a lot of people think about it and it's scary. You're absolutely right. Just even thinking about, you know, am I smart enough? Am I capable enough? Can I complete something as big as a doctorate degree? Um, and then knowing the type of person that you are, you're not just going to be like, okay, I'll just do the theory of it and not complete the dissertation. No, you'll actually finish the whole thing. And,
Yeah.
afterwards, it's going to be like, wow, I actually did this. I had a lot of doubts and questions, but I actually did this. And I know
Yeah.
that you're completely capable of it. So, which brings me to my next question. Because today is International Women's Day,
Yes.
so you're definitely an inspiration to me, to a lot of people. But let's try and put in, you've mentioned that you've experienced some trauma.
Mhm.
And on this day, what would you tell 15-year-old Diana, or
Ooh.
even other women that are thinking about, you know what, I'm thinking about going back to school for any degree. It doesn't not necessarily have to be a doctorate degree, but just any degree. On this day, what would you tell them?
Um, I would, you know, I think I'm always very encouraging to women who want to do anything in life. And one of the things that I think it's important that I say on here is that any woman who wants to complete anything in life, you are more than capable of doing it. You are more than experienced, you are more than qualified to do it. The reason why that thought is in your head, the reason why those possibilities are coming, the reason why maybe people are maybe even resistant is because you have the potential to do it. And you should go for it. You should absolutely try it, because when you did, and let's say people say, oh, but you failed at it, you didn't. You gave it a try and it wasn't what you hoped for or what you wanted. They are going to look at it as failure because they expected you to fail regardless, you know, but it's really, you gave something a try, that they do it. And, you know, like I said earlier, if you're afraid, do it afraid. Do it afraid, because being afraid is actually having courage. When you're actually in there and you're scared of doing this, you have courage. Once you have decided to take on that plunge, you are now having the courage of doing something and not sure where it's going to go. And there's nothing more powerful than that. You know, I think I would say do it. do it afraid, and find that one person that supports you 1000%. My
Mhm.
family didn't support me in my journey of wanting to complete all this schooling. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago where my parents fully understood what I was doing that I actually received some of that support. Um, but I needed to understand that it wasn't about them, it was about me. It was something I wanted to complete. I was scared. I did it feeling very insecure, not having that support system, but I had other people in my corner. I had friends, I had other family members who were in my corner, so I gravitated to them and decided to do something that I was very afraid to do. And I did it while I was afraid and while I felt highly insecure. And sure, there are things that I think back and I'm like, I could have done that better, or I should have spent more time on this and whatnot. But the point is, and I think a lot of women need to know that thing that with all those insecurities, and just find your cheerleaders, find the other women, because there are women out there who are willing to support you wholeheartedly and genuinely. Find those women, keep them in your corner, and when you're feeling like I'm going to fail at this, you need to look for your cheerleaders, because they're going to be the ones that are really going to put things into perspective for you. And sometimes it's not maybe going back to school. Maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you think you want to write a book. Maybe you've wanted to take a class in cosmetology or something like that. Do it. Do those things. It doesn't have to be anything major. It just has to be what's in your heart to do. What I would tell 15-year-old Diana would be, a girl, don't waste your time, worrying, because I when I was younger, English is my second language, and I was so afraid of how I would come off. I wasn't communicating that well in English. Although I had like A's in my in my English class, I felt like there was just that lack of understanding, in that language. And I think I want to tell 15-year-old Diana that it gets better. It gets better.
It does. Absolutely. It does. And I
What I
think
would say.
that, um, trauma a lot of times creates those insecurities. Obviously, it's not just trauma, but trauma has a very strong role in how we feel, in what we think we're capable of doing, right? And the thing
Mhm.
is, we don't really know that it's trauma until we're older, until we start to learn what trauma is, until other people tell us that it's trauma. And, I know that you have as well, but you've done a lot of trauma work, not just on yourself, but
Mhm.
also working with clients.
Mhm.
And, trauma doesn't ever go away. It's not something
Right.
that you can just erase and say, okay, I'm done. It
Right.
doesn't have to be a part of my life anymore. And I think
Right.
that trauma gets a really bad rep because it's such a negative thing and it's a burden that we have to carry, when in fact, one of the things that I really liked that you said was, even if you're scared, still do it.
Yeah.
Use that, those feelings, use, whatever came or caused you to be because of trauma, use it as a motivator, which is exactly what you've done in your life, right?
Right. Right. And you're right. I didn't start working through my childhood trauma till I was in my early 30s. And that's only a few years ago, if I'm being, fully transparent. Um, I knew that things had happened in my childhood, and I was open to certain people about those things. Um, but I didn't make the connection of that. I knew there were traumatic experiences, but I didn't connect them, right? I connected them for other people, but I didn't connect them for myself. And so I began to see a therapist, and I began working with a therapist. And, I did specifically EMDR therapy. And that brought up a lot of stuff for me while I was going through my master's program, which was like, like all of this pressure to already existing pressure and stress of, I worked full time, I was going to school, and then now this therapy, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? Um, and I think it was maybe, a year or so after I started my therapy that I really started to work through the feelings and the thoughts of what had happened in my childhood. And I started to really understand how that had affected me as a person. I mean, you know me, but I started to make I figure this out, because I knew I did it. I just didn't really understand why I did it. But people think I am standoffish. People think that, I am um, very much like type A personality, like you're standoffish on a schedule, you're arrow. And I think it was a conversation that I said, I'm such an easy, like going person, like anybody can talk to me, like, and I said, I think that I'm, I trust very easily. And you guys were like, no, you don't. I had this whole perception in my head that I was, somewhere along the lines, I became instant friends and people were, in my circle and whatnot. And the reality was that wasn't true. I kept people at arm's length until I figured out if they were safe or not. And I think, the first year and a half, maybe, like I would just kind of come and go. I would say hi to you guys. And then then I'd retract and hi, okay. And then I'd retract again. And there wasn't a lot of substance there, right? Like it was just kind of like, okay, Diana works here, and she's cool, but I don't really know anything about Diana. And I didn't understand that. I was like, what do you mean you know so much about me? And like, no, I don't. And that really just put a lot of things into perspective for me that I thought, oh my gosh, they are right. I keep people at arm's length and I don't give them a shot. And this is why they think I'm standoffish, or maybe I don't want to talk to them or I don't care for them. But that's not the case. I didn't realize that through my own trauma, I didn't feel safe with like people in general. And so until I kind of eased into it and figured out if I felt safe, then I would start to open up. And that could take years. And it made me understand, why I wasn't successful in my romantic relationships either. I'm like, it's like hot and cold that you're not sure, what you're gonna get. And I thought, oh my God, like this all comes back to, a time where I felt abandoned. I was abandoned. I felt abandoned, at that time. And I just like, it just really like it, as I got older and I started to work through it, I understood. I was like, oh my God, this is why. And then it made me understand, right? Some of my clients, when they first come into therapy, a lot of people don't just come out and just tell you everything, right? There was a client that I had that it took a couple of months for, and I knew, I'm like, there's something missing. Like, I don't feel like she's opening up like 100%. What's going on? And, and I focused on the initial concerns of why she came to see me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I just, something's not right. And then she kind of stopped showing up. And then finally one day she says, I just have to be honest with you. And she tells me everything. And I thought, oh my gosh. And again, right, looking at myself to say, I'm the same way, I don't open up easily because I have a big heart.
Mm-hmm.
I will, if you and I sit at the same table and you have no food and I do, then we're going to eat together.
Mm-hmm.
If we can figure out a way to get you what you need, and if I have to share my stuff, I don't care. We're going to figure this out. But because I have that, a lot of the times that can get taken advantage of, right? I'm super sensitive and people think that I'm like this strong person, doesn't cry, doesn't, like if you only knew. I'm in my car control, right? Things, right, that trauma effect on keeping people at arm's length, questioning, right? A lot of the things, having a low sense of esteem, right? Can can affect that, but so can trauma. And I think that emotional piece is so it affects it so much, and trauma everybody, right? Trying to work as a coping mechanism. So people would see me and think, wow, man, she's really like doing her thing. But in reality, that's how I knew how to cope with my emotions. I wouldn't deal
Mm-hmm.
with my emotions. I would just work to cope with my emotions. And again, right, those are things that trauma does.
Mm-hmm.
Being a workaholic, result of traumatic experience. So many things, that for sure into that. I mean, like I said, we can all night, but it's just those are, I think, are part of the trauma.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How do you think that experiencing trauma yourself has helped you be a more connected therapist?
I think that I think that, I can sense when people's behaviors. I can really sense when something's not right, um, or when it's making when something I said or something that's being addressed makes the other person feel uncomfortable. I
Mm-hmm.
think that because of that, I approach my clients very, calm demeanor and very sensitive to that may be painful for them. I think that I approach therapy in a very cautious way with that to ensure that my client really feels connected and really feels like that space is safe for them. To me, one of the things that it is important is that we connect, because if you're not connecting with me, then you're not going to share
Mm-hmm.
with me, and sometimes, right, that connection can be because I may trigger a client. I may be pushing a client to address something that they need to address, but they don't want to, so they're resistant to it. So we have to figure out what that is, because that can be something that can be very beneficial for the client or something that can be very hurtful for the client. So to me, it's very important that we built that rapport. And I think, that's kind of one of the things that it's always talked about, when we're talking about mental health and a master's degree level, is building rapport. Oh yeah, put all that on your notes and stuff like that. But for me, it is very important. It's crucial for us to be able to talk about some of these really heavy things,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to tell me about, your rape experience if you don't trust me. You're not going to talk to me about the domestic violence experience if you don't trust me. You're not going to talk to me, about self-harming if you don't trust me and if you don't feel that comfort to share that. So I think it's really helped me to appreciate that sensitive part of me, um, to use it in with my clients. I feel like that's where it's really like helped me.
Hmm. Absolutely. And, theory and going to school is absolutely necessary, but if you don't have that connection with your counselor or therapist or professional that you're working with, if you don't feel safe, I think you're absolutely on point. It's not going to work. It doesn't matter um, how many people you see, how long you're there, it's just not going to work. And I know that you, just like we've worked with a lot of people that, when they come in, they say, well, you're number 15, that, 15th counselor that I've worked with, or, I've been in therapy all my life, or, but just because you're attending and going every week or however long you do it for, if you don't feel safe, number one, and if you're not connected with your provider, it's not going to work. Um,
Right.
and I think it also has a lot to do with where you are in life, right? Sometimes we
Right.
feel like maybe we're ready to work through it, but when it starts getting to the messy parts, when it starts getting to um, the root of the issues, it becomes very scary. And I feel that that's one of the places where people just stop coming to
Mhm.
see us because of shame, because of guilt, because of embarrassment, because it's scary to be vulnerable, because whatever it might be, you know, we're scared to have to face that part of us. We're scared to have to confront trauma
Right.
that obviously we did not bring on ourselves, that happened to us. And now we have to be responsible to work through it.
Right. And, and I think we know that in trauma, there is a lot of shame and guilt, right? So we already have a client coming in with a lot of that. And, the therapeutic relationship, it is so, so crucial because it is scary and because people will cancel and, clients would be like, I can't make it today because it is scary to have to work through that. I remember before I started with my first EMDR session, I freaked out and I had never freaked out like that. I think, it was the first time that I really was like, oh my gosh, I'm really afraid of this. Like, this is really scary for me. And I worked it through with my therapist and I had built that relationship with her to say, I'm really scared. I don't think I can do this today because I am just terrified. And so she said, we don't have to do it today, but we're going to do it because this tells me that there's some serious stuff we got to figure out. So if we have to figure out those serious things, then we got to work through them, but we have to do them in a place where you feel safe. So let's get you there. And then, we will work on our first EMDR session, but it is scary. It is such a I think, as being a therapist, to be, like gone through some things in life and that they are willing to come in and share those with me and share some of the more vulnerable sides and some of the most vulnerable things with me, where I'm able to sit there and help them work through that, and build a healthier, lifestyle, healthier coping mechanisms, um, be able to, you know, assist them in seeing life in a different way. I think that's such a privilege, for therapists to be able to sit there and you're sharing, there's people that are sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with us that they've never shared with anybody else. They're choosing to come into therapy and share them with us. And I think that's there's no higher privilege, than that, where somebody feels like I can come to you and I need to talk to somebody about it, and you feel safe to do so.
Absolutely. So once you get your doctorate, because obviously you are going to get your doctorate, um, otherwise, I'm going to push you and tell you to, only because I know that you are beyond capable of doing it. How are you thinking of going about your world domination plan? What are your plans for your doctorate degree? What would you like to do?
Um, I've thought about this a few times. I've thought about what am I going to do with it? What's the goal? And I think I have big dreams. Will those dreams come reality? I don't know, but
Well, 15-year-old you kind of already
I
predicted
think
what you're doing,
I've
so.
thought about right. So I know that I want to have a nonprofit. I know that that is something um, that's in my heart and I really want to do. Um, I do kind of go back and forth and deciding what it is that, I want to really do. But for sure, a nonprofit that works with children and their families. I do want to focus a lot on women because I feel like there's a lot of support for women that's still needed out there. There is a lot of support out there. I feel like there's, support needed in the Latina community and with Spanish speaking services, like 1000%. There are services out there, but there's a lack of support for Spanish speakers. A lot of things get lost, in that translation period. Um, but I also don't want to disregard, the men that may also need support. Um, so I'm still not 1000% sure, this is what my focus is going to be. But if I'm dreaming big, I want to have a nonprofit organization that also extends to Guatemala, and that's where my parents are from. That's where I grew up. And in our reality, that's where I experienced a lot of the abuse that I experienced as a child.
Mhm.
And I think that I'm not the only one. There's a lot of support for mental health needed in Guatemala. We have one of the highest rates of suicide. I think that tells us a lot. There's also a lot of violence in that country. And I think that a lot of violence against women has been normalized, in many ways. And I do want to extend a nonprofit organization to Guatemala where, if I'm dreaming big, it's where we're somewhat of a shelter for young girls and women in general, where they can come and feel safe and have resources, whether it's food resources, whether it's financial resources, educational resources, mental health resources, resources in general. We, I don't know if we know this, but in the research that I have done and the experiences and things that that I have done in Guatemala, child labor is very much a thing. And
Mhm.
there are young girls at the age of 12 and 13 that are getting married and that they're having children, at that age, and they're not fully understanding what they're getting themselves into. Um, and if we go into sexual assault, is normalized. It's the whole you asked for it, or okay, deal with it. It's it is a big part of the violence in Guatemala, and I think that these women need support, and I think that these women end up pregnant, and they need support. They need to understand what's happening. Um, as well as educational resources. I mean, being a little girl in Guatemala, I knew that education wasn't going to be a part of, my life unless I came to the States. That wasn't really, part of the plan to become a woman who's educated and who, has some kind of career. Because Guatemala is still very much traditional, and they
Mhm.
still expect, you to cook and clean and go home to a good husband. And sure, you can work, but your priority is your home and your family,
Right.
not necessarily in education. So I think that there are a lot of women in Guatemala who wish to have an education. And I also think that there are a lot of limitations as to why they don't have those resources. I mean, again, right, we can go into a whole another conversation about this and some of the struggles in Guatemala, but if I'm dreaming big, I'm dreaming of, nonprofit, organization extending services to Guatemala, having multiple shelters in Guatemala where we are supporting women who are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, or some kind of traumatic experience in their life. And we are going to support them in different ways and provide resources for them in different ways. Currently, what I am doing here in the States is I go to a local church in Fontana, and there we started more of you could say, a women's ministry called AS. And, our vision and our mission is really to see, mujeres fortalecidas through our stories. We want to see these women completely, fulfilled as women in its as whole, right? In their with our using our stories to be able to connect with the women. So, this thing with AS started, it's going to be 5 years this year. It wasn't really called AS at that time, in life. We were just starting, trying to figure out just to do women's ministry, because it is hard to experience trauma outside of the Christian world, but it's also really hard to experience it when you're in the Christian world.
Mhm.
So the vision and the mission of AS is, I'll say it in Spanish, alcanzar y empoderar a mujeres con nuestras historias. We want to reach and we want to empower women with our stories. And with AS, we didn't know this till this year, and AS is not just composed of me, it's composed of a group of women, who go to church, who have different stories, who are believers, in Christ. But that's not a requirement. AS is really the richness of it is to use these stories to talk about some of the really tough things that happen in our lives, whether or not we are in church.
Mhm.
Because the reality is that some of us do come to Christ when our lives are in complete chaos. And it is then that we start to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But some women have been believing in Christ for years. And it's in that belief that then they start to experience the chaos, right? They experience abuse. We're not going too far, right? And I think you can agree with me on this. Sometimes the abuse is happening at the hands of other Christians.
Mhm.
It's, I know we don't want to talk about, how they know God. How is it that, no, it's a reality. It's happening. I follow, I think it's the Butterfly Project on Instagram, and they touched on domestic violence in the Christian community. It has a super high rate. What's the difference? No one talks about it.
Mhm.
No one talks about it. It's swept under the rug, right? But these are the things that we need to talk about. And with AS, there's, we have in our panel, we have a woman who's been divorced, and is now in a much healthier relationship. She's not married yet, but she's in a much healthier relationship. Imagine going through a divorce when you are, she would sing in the worship group at her other church and whatnot. How do you go through a divorce while you're serving at church, right? It's like the taboo, right? We have a woman who accepted Christ in her life when she was 13 years old. We have, another woman who's experienced, her children. One of her daughters experienced an almost like near death experience, and she continued on. She experienced depression, postpartum depression, after one of her pregnancies, and that was tough. She's experienced menopause, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is really, really hard. And then you also have myself, who's experienced a lot of childhood trauma, and they all have different areas of success, right? If we talk about one of the pastors, she's super successful. We talk about another pastor, it's like her success in life is through her children, right? And I have that educational background, but we don't discriminate. One of the things that's still somewhat of a taboo, especially in Latino churches, are tattoos. You can't see it right now, but my hair is purple, and I have participated in AAF panels with blue hair, and it's totally fine. I participated with my tattoos, and it's totally fine. There is no judgment, because there's an understanding, right, that none of us are perfect, but there are stories there that can change the life of someone at church, right? The place that everybody's just pretending that everything is okay, that everybody's pretending that nothing's going on. And the reality is that there's so much going on. And these women sometimes don't have that one outlet that they can trust, where they can go and feel understood. And that's one of the things that we're doing with AS. I think it's more focused on that. We started to touch on a mental health piece. We started to touch on a wellness piece. We started to touch on spiritual, health as well, educational health, and understanding, all of the things that as women we go through, so that the next generation can also have a place where they feel safe. So AS is part of, I think, like one of my babies. I really believe in what the mission is with AS. I I believe that it comes also with the full support of God and God's work, to really be like, Jesus, and to really be out there with the people that are hurting. But we fail to sometimes see that the people that are hurting are actually sitting next to us, listening to that preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to also provide them with that same support. So dreaming big in the future as Dr. Diana Medina, then yeah, we're doing big things, we're doing research and stuff like that, and providing shelter for women. We're talking to Diana, Medina, as a therapist right now, as a, PhD student, completing a doctorate degree. Then AS is definitely a big part of my life.
That's exciting. Sounds like
Yeah.
there are a lot of exciting things in your future, and I know that you're not anywhere near being done doing
No.
the things that you want to do. Um, and your story's still got a lot more chapters. So I'm excited to be a part of those chapters by just, kind of being here for you and just, seeing the greatness that you have created and will continue to create. So I'm excited for what your next chapters are. It's been amazing being able to sit down with you and just kind of get to know you a little bit more. Um, Obviously, there's a lot more to know about you, which, we'll continue to explore and discuss in the coming webinars. But thank you so much. I feel honored, humbled, and privileged to continue to spend time with you and know you. And like I said, these next chapters in your life are going to be exciting for sure. A lot of work, but definitely very exciting. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Um, for those of us that are hopefully tuning in for the first time and hopefully not for the last time, we have a lot more exciting topics coming up. So we encourage you to sign up for them, or just watch them on YouTube, either one. So thank you so much, Diana. It's been
Thank
great
you.
talking to you, and we'll talk very soon, for sure.
Yes, we will. We will. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to let people get to know me so that they don't think I'm standoffish.
Not even close. Once you get to know Diana, yeah, no, but totally understandable. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon for sure.
Yes, you will.
All right, take care.
You-
So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon for sure.
Yes, you will.
All right, take care.